We're gonna do the ultimate test today, and that is we're gonna see if we can get a good or at least decent metal tone out of recording a mic'd tube amp at a low volume. Here's the thing, plugins, these virtual amp sims, they have changed the world of recording guitar, and they're awesome. I play through them all the time, but look, you're like me, sometimes we just want to play through a real tube amp, and even more than that, sometimes we want to record through a real tube amp, but it's not always, actually it's rarely feasible to crank up a tube amp to that massive volume and record. So I wanted to do this little test. I wanted to see if we can get a good, or again, at least a decent metal tone from our tube amp at a low volume. And when I say low volume, I mean a volume that you can record in your little home studio, like this 10 by 11 room that I'm in right now. And it's not gonna bother someone so much in the other room. Yeah, they'll still hear it, but it's not gonna be like blaring loud. Now for this test, I am using the EVH 5153 50 watt head with a 212 matching cab, and this is the EL34 tube version. Now I want you to hear this in the full mix, but let's just play some individual tracks here first. Here's what the rhythm sounds like, and I will share the settings of my amp and some of the other settings in the studio at the end of the video, so hang around for that. Alright, so that's not so bad, but again, the important part is how does that sound in the full mix? I'm gonna get to that, but let's play a lead track real quick. I want to hear what this sounds like for a guitar solo. Not too shabby, but definitely could use some work. However, remember, this is the tone that I'm going to be using in the full mix, which that tone often doesn't quite sound as great by itself. So let's see, or hear rather, how this sounds in the full mix. Didn't quite expect that. Now, I'm not gonna pretend that's the best and most ultimate metal tone I've ever heard in my life, and I know you've heard better, but I've heard worse metal tones on professional albums that are out there and have been released. So not too bad for recording a real tube amp at a low semi-bedroom volume here. So I'm gonna run through my settings real quick, and I'm gonna share just how I recorded this, what I did in the studio here with you, and then we're gonna run one more tiny little test after that, so make sure you hang around for that. It's gonna be pretty cool. All right, so let's take a look at these settings. Again, the volume there is, I mean, it's like 1.7, 1.6, something like that, which is kind of loud in here. Like, it's definitely not quiet, but it's still pretty much a bedroom tone. So the gain, this is the thing I did crank up a little bit. We've got it at like 7 there. And that's a little bit higher than what I would normally have it if I had the volume cranked up. Because for rhythms, you don't want too much gain on that because it's going to muddy up your mix. However, at a low volume, we can stand to crank it up just a little bit. Now, I did boost the gain some for the lead track. Now, the lows, I've got it boosted just a little bit to give it that punch. Again, since we're at a low volume, if I were to have the amp cranked up to like a normal recording volume, then of course I would back off on the bass a little bit just so that it sits a little bit better in the mix and it's not competing with the bass guitar and kick. The mids, this is my typical mid setting. I didn't really touch that. Same with the highs here. My highs, as you can see right there, they're a little past 6 there. And my presence, again, didn't really mess with that either. I kind of just kept that right there where I normally have it. So the only thing that really changed here was I played with a little bit more gain because, again, we're at a lower volume. Of course, the volume's lower. That changed for recording a mic'd tube amp. And then the bass, I gave that just a little boost. Now here we've got the good old Shure SM57 mic, the trusted metal mic. And I didn't really do anything different here. It's, pretty close to the grill there. And I don't really have it on the center of the cone. It's just off to the side just a little bit. That's kind of where I like it. Now I've got my mic running directly into my PreSonus Quantum 2 interface. The cable's actually in the back there. And on this channel for the mic, I've got it set, the main volume set at 39. So normally if I were playing with, at a louder volume, I would have that, turned down quite a bit, probably around 20 or something like that. The only other element here was I did add a stock EQ plugin to the guitar track. So that's 3 guitar tracks. And those of you who have been watching me for a while, thank you by the way, you know that I always record 2 rhythm guitar tracks and hard pan each one. So I did the same thing for what you just heard. And of course I got a lead track going up the middle. I added an EQ plugin to each one of those tracks just to kind of take out some of the harshness that I was hearing from that recorded tone. But as you can see, the settings are not anything outrageous, just some really subtle changes there. Again, just to take out some of that harshness and help it just fit in the mix a little bit better. Now, one final test I want you to hear. So I want to compare what we just did, the tube amp recorded at a low volume. I want to compare that side by side to tracks that were recorded with plugins. And I'm doing this because I originally wrote this little musical piece here, and maybe I'll use it for an album or something at some point because it's kind of growing on me. But I originally recorded this with plugins, so I still had those tracks, and I'm thinking, let's compare the two. So I'm going to let you hear these kind of side by side, and I'll put on the screen which is which. So what did you guys think about the metal tones that you heard in this video? So first things first, we've got the real tube amp mic'd up, recorded at a lower volume. I want to know your thoughts on that. Was it a good metal tone? Was it kind of decent? Or do you think it just plain out sucked? Number 2, I want you to tell me what tone you like best between the low volume real amp that we recorded and the plugins that you heard just now. So leave those in the comments below. I'm anxious to read those and we can chat more about that. Now real quick before we part ways, you can listen to my music, my albums. There are links in the description of this YouTube video, so please check that out. That's a great way you can support me. Also, I do have a free metal guitar practice guide. That link is in the description as well if you haven't picked that up yet, so be sure you grab your copy of that. Guys, thank you so much for supporting my channel. I appreciate all of you. Until the next video, keep it metal.